From the low desert in beautiful Tempe, Arizona, this is Politics and the Past with Robert Ferguson. And those of you who are watching can also recognize my frequent co-host, Jack Hinrichs. And we'll see our wonderful guest, Troy Holderby, who I had the good fortune of teaching last semester in the Foundations of Democracy class offered by the Center for American Institutions. Now, Troy, you were not anticipating this question, but how much did you like our class? Was it the best class you've ever taken or the best class that anybody has ever taken?
Honestly, the best class anybody's ever taken, if we're gonna be real here.
Okay. Oh,
Um,
yep. Good answer.
no, it was actually a great class. I have a lot of experience in sort of Socratic and dialogue-based classes. And so I think that one was the best because you had a lot of people from every background kind of coming into it versus the more ones focused just on like poli-sci majors. People can get very like analytical about it. So it was a great class.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I thought it was a good class, and Troy was one of our standout students. Troy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about let's start with how you ended up at ASU.
That's a long story. So,
Perfect. I love podcasts are built on long stories, so that's good.
so my academic background, I this is kind of part of my story. So I kind of grew up homeless, and so there were a lot of challenges I had early on. So I had started off in public school, kind of wherever. From there, around sixth grade, my parents were able to put me into a prep school, and that changed my life. So I went from C and F student to A's and B's just by the awesome community they had there. I ended up getting my GED when I was 16. I went to community college, took a break for a semester to go work in politics, and then decided it was better to get my degree than not. So I came to ASU about a year ago now.
Okay. And are you from the Valley?
Yeah, so born and raised in Arizona.
Okay. Okay. Well, there's a lot there already I'd like to dig into, but let's in the interest of time. Although again, it's a podcast, so I don't know why I'm in the interest of time. It's but where did your political, you mentioned you worked in politics, and I know you're very active politically, which is one of the reasons you're not only doing your political leadership certificate here with the Center for American Institutions, but also why I invited you on today. But where did your politics come from? Maybe your interest in politics.
My interest in politics definitely came from growing up. So being a, probably, so I would have been off and on homeless and I had a hard parent life growing up from probably about the time until eighth grade. So a lot of those experiences and challenges that I had made me interested in um, how can we encourage people to live better? How can we kind of benefit the people who are struggling in society? So I really think that's where my interest in politics came from. And a lot of my values came from learning to question things and then definitely my religious beliefs. I distinctly remember it. So this would have been 2016 in fifth grade. Politics was a big thing. That was the Trump Hillary election. And in our class, everybody was pro. I'm conservative. Everybody was pro Hillary at the time, including me, except for one kid in there we had named Gabe. The day after the election, everybody walked in, and Gabe had the one little Republican hat on, um, and it was just kind of making fun of everybody, like the walk of shame, and came and sat down. But that was really monumental to me because I remember talking to my parents, who both are staunch independent people. They don't really care either way. And I said, "Well, look, Hillary's winning the. I think she was winning the primary poll or something, or like she was projected to win the election." And I was like, "Look, isn't this great?" Um, and she's like, "Well, I don't know. Why do you think it's great?" And that was my first experience of being questioned on things and not just accepting what people have been telling me. So from that developed a lot of my ability to question things and not just accept, the prevailing media from one side or the other.
Interesting. Interesting. So I mean, you also mentioned that you're kind of a difficult social upbringing in many ways.
Yeah.
And so was there, I also expect there was some engagement and interaction with the state and with with public programs there.
Yeah, 100%. Not a big fan of any of those programs. They're all awfully run. Um, yeah, that definitely it was definitely part of introducing to having a rough upbringing gets you direct face to face with how the government's actually being run and kind of the direct person experience that people have with these agencies. So that was a big influence. And I think I really became politically interested during Kerry Lake's Senate campaign or Kerry Lake's governor's campaign that we had. This is my first time like seeing political ads and actually knowing what was happening. And it was like, well, that's cool, you know. Somebody's filming that, somebody's running. How do I get involved in that? So
Interesting.
that
And
was
that
a big
was
piece as well.
and Kerry Lake's gubernatorial campaign, that was 2020, correct?
Yeah,
Right. Okay. And no, 2022.
that would have been 22.
Yeah, 2022. Sorry that, now that in my dotage, in my elderly dotage here, the years kind of run together a little bit. And that was where Kari Lake was the Republican candidate for governor of Arizona running against Katie Hobbs, who was the Democratic candidate. And unfortunately, Troy, all your efforts didn't quite pan out on that one.
Well, I wasn't involved then, so maybe that's part of it.
Okay. No, that's probably true. Okay. It's okay. You know what, Troy? I have been on precisely one winning campaign in my life. And it
Congrats.
was, yeah, thank
That's an
you. And
accomplishment.
yeah, one. And I got to tell you, I was not a big part of that campaign. I was a very small part of that campaign, like the smallest part of that campaign, probably. And it was in a district where the guy I was working for was won by about 83%.
Okay.
So
Slight uphill
I
battle.
was completely pointless. It was a completely pointless effort on my part. He was going to win that if nobody knew his name.
Yeah.
To add to that, I'm happy to hear that the collective winning record of politics in the past Desert Dialogue hosts is 2 campaigns, because I have also been on exactly one winning campaign. So this is a real group of experts that we've assembled here today.
Well, Jack, you've been on one, but you're like 19 years old.
That's
I'm
true.
almost
Like
40. I had a lot more experience with it.
that's fair.
Okay, so Troy, you mentioned that you were conservative,
Mhm.
and Kerry Lake was a Republican candidate. Um, what you mentioned a little bit about, your religious beliefs. You mentioned a little bit about your engagement in 2016, and finally, and maybe realizing that challenging established narratives in your mind. What else do you think cultivated your conservatism?
Um, Really, it is those 2 issues of challenging the established belief and then my religious views, so I can go into that more.
Yeah, please.
Um, I became, like I said, kind of politically aware around 2016. This was the, like, libs getting owned on YouTube videos and, all of this, like, media shockwave we had, I think, with, local people filming and getting involved in politics from a content side. Um, and so a lot of that was the a lot of that was pushing this new way of thinking about and approaching our problems from a very like human subjective view. So I think we had a lot of push around me. How do I define things? Um, how do I want to talk about this? A lot of politics comes from our psychological effects, things that are happening both in our country and then to the mindset. And so I think we had a large shift in maybe like the fruition of people's minds around that time, where everything became, how do how do I believe I have worth? How do who am I? Those identity politics. And so the way that those function are there is no objective observer of whether or not someone's valuable, who you are. It's all based on you. So you get into this circular reasoning inside your head of, well, I am who I am. and you identify kind of these shallow things about you as if you can be broken down to your race, your gender, your politics, what school you go to. Um, and without that concrete base for who people are, that I might get my religious views from, that there is an objective God that values everybody. I think without that, we saw the fruition of these mindsets that created this um, kind of these crazy left wing ideologies that I would say. And you combine that with the polarization of media, and it just created complete political chaos.
Hmm, that's interesting. Jack, I'm interested in your take. What about what Troy just said?
Sure. I mean, I would agree, of course, from a very different political viewpoint, that 2016, I mean, 2016 was also when I became interested in politics. That was also my political awakening. And so I had a lot of the same experiences as Troy did, around that period, and watching the chaos. I think that he was stated that very well, the political chaos that happened during that time. And so when you look at that sort of individual basis for politics, and how it comes out of individual identity, well, I would disagree with Troy in that I do think that there is value in having that sort of conception of one's identity and how that feeds into politics. I would agree that that became more prevalent in that 2016 and post 2016 era, and I think that that's an insightful observation.
Yeah, there's definitely value there, but we saw a interesting. I think we've really just sort of entered the technology is everywhere
Mhm.
mindset for people, and that's just completely changed the way we function in terms of our biology with dopamine and screens everywhere, and everything else going on.
Mhm. Absolutely. The influence of technology has been something we've discussed at several politics and leadership club meetings and in several previous podcast episodes. And I absolutely agree with you that it's changed entirely the way we look at politics and indeed the way we look at ourselves.
I mean, I'm not of your generation. I experienced 2016 very differently. Being older and being in a different country. But it was still hegemonic. It was still 2016 was everywhere. But I think Troy makes a really important point, and Jack, to build, that when technology and individual self-assessment and individual interrogation goes so far without there being any grounding whatsoever, I think it can lead people to very strange and odd places.
Sure.
And religion is absolutely one way that you can that you can establish that base. I'm not sure it's the only way,
Mhm.
but having a grounded sense of where you are and where you fit in the world, whatever that is, kind of prevents you from going on a um, almost self-indulgent quest for meaning.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly, I think we're kind of seeing it on the right now, kind of going the opposite way too, with your point about identity being important, Jack.
Mhm.
That now there seems to be an now over reliance on the right for identity politics. So, I'm Catholic, I'm America first, kind of the new like Gen Z right wing that's kind of popping up here.
Mhm.
That's becoming huge. And I think that's the same issue now, kind of leaning too much into itself.
Yeah, I'd agree. You know, it's an easy way to conduct politics. It's an easy way to try to identify with members of the electorate or various constituencies within the electorate. But I agree with you that it's really an unfortunate and not a very nuanced way of conducting a political campaign. I absolutely agree with your assessment.
Yeah. And the other thing is, of course, 2016 is intersecting with this moment where we're trying to figure out everybody has these online avatars of themselves, whether it's on Tumblr, whether it's on X, whether it was on 4chan, or whatever it was, right? And I think we're still trying to figure out as a society what is the relationship between our online avatars and our real life personalities. And that's trying to, you know, in the Tumblr world, you saw people who were, exploring their online avatars doing it, to an extreme degree, and then demanding that the real world accept these extreme avatars as if they were real world people, but they're not. And trying to figure out that relationship and trying to, I think your generation is in a better position to actually do that than generations previously that are still trying to figure out this online world.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would absolutely agree with that.
Well, okay, my perspective on metaphysics and the internet is not where everybody thinks.
I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
I'm glad that's why I know that's why everybody's here. It's why you've got people lined up out the doors trying to listen to this thing. Just trying to get that little bit of internet that's needed to listen to it, right?
Mhm.
But anyway, I think that was an interesting conversation, and I'm glad we were able to have it. But Troy, so you come to Arizona State University as somebody who has some experience in conservative politics before you get here. What is the expectation of what it is going to be like being a conservative on campus among conservatives?
Um, Depends on which conservatives you're talking about. There isn't a specific view of universities, I think, for conservatives. Um, and I say that because we have a lot of media push being anti-university. This isn't just a conservative issue, though. That's also why it's also important. But universities are scams. They're bad investments for the majority of people. I think there was a study recently that your job likelihood, if you have a college degree, is just about the same as people with high school degrees. I might be off on there. It might be something with underemployment or overemployment with your degree. Um, so there's a lot of uncertainty around colleges. Tuition keeps going up. Um, when you come to campus, there is a concern. I think there's a false concern around liberal bias for professors. That it depends on where you go to. There are some small liberal arts colleges you can go to where that's absolutely an issue. Um, but I think we have, and never, we'll try and stay away from the metaphysics too much. But the people my age who are coming up now who got involved in politics in 2016, where, every week there's a new video of some like liberal professor going crazy, and we're going to bust them and get them fired. And I think we had an issue in Oklahoma or Kansas a few weeks ago with an issue happening with that.
University of Oklahoma, yeah,
Yeah.
it was an
Um,
assignment, yeah.
yeah. So it's not strong in that, but I think we're having a reemergence of people kind of remembering when that was happening. Now it's 2026, so it's almost a decade. So it is a decade ago of people my age who are growing up now, and we're kind of remembering that in our subconsciouses, and that's influencing our approach when we come to campus.
Mm.
Um, but most colleges are in the business of making money. Most big colleges are in the business of doing research. So a lot of them, I think, do a very good job of trying to keep neutral on that issue.
Okay. I mean, I do think, one of the things that you pointed out that's, I think, really important is there are small liberal arts colleges where there are issues that are, where there are social pressures, ideological pressures that are far less likely to exist at a place like Arizona State University or your state flagship school or your land grant university. They're typically very different places.
Yeah, and we're also getting a push in the opposite way. So here at ASU, I'll plug one of my favorite programs. So we have Skettle, Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership, which is a school based around Socratic political seminar and dialogue as its base. That we need to have more open dialogue and more educated dialogue around these issues to help guide our society. So we have programs like that popping up at ASU, popping up across the country. So there seems to be an investment from universities and from local states and politics to create schools like that too. So there is an active push to kind of take away this bias.
Sure. And that's true. At Arizona State, we got that program. We have the Center for American Institutions, which does something. There's some overlap there, and you're seeing this in colleges across the United States where there are programs being established. In fact, the first one, I believe, the first or the second one was here at Arizona State, but the model is being applied across the country in at various public universities, lots of them in Ohio, the University of North Carolina, two of them in Florida, Florida State, and then the University of Florida. Um, and there's a few others that I'm missing that are intended to bring humanistic inquiry and Socratic engagement in a more neutral ideological fashion back to the liberal arts. But you might come across, when you come across some, liberal professor getting owned online, chances are it's not typically at the state flagships. It
Yeah.
might be it's at a small liberal arts college or maybe an Ivy League.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Um, Jack, I know you're not a conservative, so this is why I love having you on one of the reasons I love having you on the podcast, and especially for a conversation like this. Um, what what's your sense on what the conservative perspective is on for conservative students coming into college? The
Sure.
conservative students you've spoken to.
Yeah, so I've talked to Troy and then also Elise Johnson, who is on the executive board of the Politics and Leadership Club and also works at the Center for American Institutions and has been on this podcast about this issue. Um, and, I grew up as a Democrat in South Dakota, as one of 11 Democrats in South Dakota, I like to joke. Um, so I've got some experience with being a political minority. And I can empathize with folks like Troy or Elise or any conservative who comes onto a college campus and how they might be a political minority or in the minority politically on a college campus. And it's a tough thing. I know from experience to know that most of the people around you disagree with you fundamentally, that most of the people around you uh, don't understand why you have reached the opinions that you have. Um, and that they're with the emphasis on politics in today's day and age in that post 2016 era, how much of your sort of social identity is filtered through your political beliefs. And so that's something that I can really empathize with based from my experiences. And the other thing that I'd like to bring up is the Center for American Institutions. One of the things we try to emphasize through the club and our various other civil discourse initiatives is reminding people how much they actually agree with one another. That even in such divisive political times, we agree on more than we disagree on. And so when Troy was talking about things like tuition rises in college and college being, or college models fundamentally being about making money and how many people are going to college who quite frankly shouldn't be, who would be better served by going to a trade school or entering into a different program. Those are things that coming from a completely different political viewpoint that I agree with and that many people who I agree with politically also agree with. And so reminding ourselves that despite the, label on the ballot or despite the letter I write on my voter registration card, that we agree on these fundamental issues, I think is one of the values of the initiatives Troy brought up.
Yeah. That's actually a big thing we're trying to push. So I'm also the president of the College Republicans Club that we have at ASU. Um, and so we have a very specific vision of kind of creating a new Republican and a new political activist organization on campuses. So historically, organizations like College Republicans, they're going to be focused on uh, the local elections going on in the state and these kind of cultural political issues. Rarely are they focused on campus politics, student government, administration, and things like that. So a big push we have is to create the identity of what does it mean to be a conservative when it comes to campus issues, and then how to get involved with that. So we're planning on launching programs to help people run for student government and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because most of the time that I think of college Republicans or college Democrats, it's the same, is that it's a feeder organization for local campaigns to find volunteers, to groom the best, to identify the best of the best and to groom them for more and more things. But fundamentally, you're the local campaign, you buy the college Republicans some pizza or something like that, and you help in order to get some to collect some volunteers for your campaign. But Troy, you're talking about something different, which is really interesting. You're talking about actually creating something with some institutional weight on campus that isn't just about, a debate club that meets for some pizza and drinks now and again, but it's fundamentally about recruiting for local office campaigns.
Yeah. Um, that pretty much defines it. We have our so the College Republicans mission statement is that people feel like they've been left behind by both the left and right wing of the party. And so we want to go into those communities and foster relationships and redefine what it means. And so the biggest way that you get people involved in politics, it's more than just being this feeder organization, which is important. It's important to have a pipeline, get talented people where they can make an impact. But we also want to get more people involved, create better citizens, and hopefully make some change. And so that's the way you do it, and that's why that's a huge priority for us.
Well, I don't know, Jack. That sounds awfully Tocquevillian to me.
It absolutely does. And the College Republicans, one thing I wanted to mention here, is a member of ASU Civic Engagement Coalition, which helps put together, voter registration drives and put together ASU's voter plan whenever an election season comes up. And the Politics and Leadership Club just in the previous month joined that coalition as well. And so when you're looking at, actual initiatives on campus, this is something I think Arizona State University does very well, is there is an atmosphere of collaboration, of saying, we might disagree politically, but it's important that folks vote. It's important that a democratic atmosphere, that a democratic culture is promoted. And that's something I think the college Republicans at ASU have done pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting, and what it suggests is that you've got people at the grassroots level of politics that are kind of doing their own thing, that are kind of, that are creating their own political culture that is separate from what we see going on entirely online or being driven by um, major national uh, entities for their own purposes.
Yeah. This was going back to the 2016 idea. We have the pattern repeating now, I think, where we're seeing a massive rise of young influencers, especially on the conservative side. That's where most of my bias is at, in terms of what I'm seeing every day on my feed. But so many young people are becoming influencers. And I think these are the people who grew up in middle school who said, I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. They got into politics. They said, well, this is perfect. So we're seeing a huge rise of influencers coming in. Um, and they're trying to shift the grassroots, both the current political grassroots and the future grassroots of Gen Z. Um, and there seems to be a disconnect for a lot of that from my experience. And we're also not even pushing people who are kind of in that sphere into the actual grassroots of politics, where at least in my issues are mainly concerning Arizona. Um, we have some grassroots issues in terms of how we organize. Arizona, you have a very MAGA aligned grassroots in the Republican Party. Um, Arizona, if I remember right, it's about 50-50 for in terms of numbers, about the same amount of Republicans as independents, and I believe Democrats are a little lower than that. So it's a huge issue getting people plugged in. And then also out of every five people that move to Arizona, three of them are from out of state. So you have this giant shifting culture around here, especially for people coming into college too, that we need to recreate and create a real grassroots community and culture. Because I think without that, we're not going to see any actual change, both
Sure.
now and in the future.
Sure, and one of the things that I think is, you've touched on something here that I think is fascinating is not just 2016, it goes back about another 20 years, maybe 30 years, the nationalization of politics. And if you're the college Republicans at Arizona State University, how do you get students that are Republicans that are largely being influenced by people speaking to national narratives? How do you get them interested in issues that, matter locally, but probably don't matter that much nationally, but are still important issues?
I think, and it depends on what your issues are on campus, but this was done wonderfully at, I want to say it was a university in Texas. So they had just raised parking prices, I think, at the time. So it went from like $5 to like $20 for parking or something like that. And it was a College Republicans club, I believe, at the time, that had gone to that had gone to all the cars and put giant tickets on them. And they ticketed every single car on there. You go and you take your ticket off and it said, parking prices are now this, show up to this meeting and like say to I think it was the city at the time. So it's pretty simple, bare bone issues that are happening. Students don't have money. We need to prioritize keeping things affordable for people.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing: you can actually make a difference doing that.
Yeah, and this was probably one of the best things that we had happen. Maybe I should rework that phrase. But so we did. So Charlie Kirk was tragically assassinated, and um, through a long 4 or 5 days, we were able to put together a vigil for him. It ended up being the largest in the United States, outside of the vigil ran by Turning Point Action in Glendale, here in Arizona. Um, and that was a massive inspiration to everybody who was involved. I had people the following few weeks all texting and calling me, being like, "Hey, can we accomplish that? Can we force ASU to put a giant United States flag in front of Old Main?" Um, and a lot of these projects that push the boundary of what people could think was possible. And it's incredible seeing that. And that's really what you need for political action. It's more than just going to meetings. It's more than just influencers online. It's you can have a set vision, and with the help of even just 5 people all working really hard, you can accomplish that.
Yeah, I think that's true. So, Troy, for people who are interested in politics, but are maybe their engagement with politics is strictly through, let's say, the digital world, how would you say that being involved in an organization like College Republicans um, might make you look at things a little bit differently?
Um, well, you meet real people. So we were just having the conversation of, for example, people's online avatars and personas compared to in person. Um, how many times have you seen a celebrity or something online, on TV, whatever it is, and maybe they come to town, you go to an event, and you see them in person, and there's this almost a bit of a shock because they're not everything that they presented themselves to be.
Never meet your
Uh,
heroes.
yeah, never meet your heroes, exactly. And so you realize that, wow, these really are the same people. Working in politics, this is an experience if people go into will probably have, where they go, wow, so and so's a congressman, so and so's a governor. And you meet them for the first time and really starstruck. And then you meet them now the 10th time because you've seen them everywhere. And you're like, oh yeah, that's Dave. He's the he's the governor for Arizona or something like that.
Right. And your level of your level of how impressed you are with that person kind of just goes down and down and
Yeah,
down and
exactly.
down, and every time you meet them.
And so it
I'm
shows me
sure
that
the route they give. Right.
because
Right.
we were talking about this issue of polarization, you actually meet people and the polarization quickly disappears.
Right. Look them in yeah. You look them in the eyes and that changes a lot of things, right? Now, Jack, I know that's not the case with South Dakota Democrats. I know that every South Dakota Democrat you've ever met has increased in your esteem every time that you've met them. But what's your take on this?
I appreciate what Troy just said, that polarization dissolves when you meet a person in person. And I've talked about little platoons before, but I'll do it again. Um, the fact that little platoons specifically deals with apolitical organizations, but even political organizations that get people off of their algorithm, that get people out of their political bubbles. And so they're forced to interact with real human beings with real human problems and real human visions, and forced to empathize with those individuals and forced to care about those individuals. That's what ultimately saves us from what appears to be an uncontrolled train barreling down a track of polarization. That's what saves us. And so it's really nice to hear Troy talk about the importance of interpersonal interaction in that political space. That's something that at the Politics of Leadership Club, we really prioritize. It's one of the reasons why I started going to club meetings. And it's one of the reasons that I decided to run for leadership in that club. And so hearing about the importance of that, I absolutely agree with him that in order to dissolve that polarization, we need to prioritize bringing people off of those online platforms and into real life conversations with one another.
Yeah, we had, and this is something that I learned taking one of the courses, here at ASU this semester. You look up polling, political polarization began around 20, I want to say 14, 15, 16. Um, and the best thing that we have to go off of what caused the massive polarization we see today is the like button was invented and the retweet button was invented. And these created the digital echosphere or echo chambers that we have going on. And man, that's where everything is coming from. We're all isolated online.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting. I can't remember the guy's name who was the Jack Dorsey, the original main CEO of Twitter, before Musk took it over. But I remember him saying at something. He said, when they invented the like button or the retweet button, whichever one that it was, it's like they honestly just thought it was going to promote engagement and that was good. And he's like, we never brought in a game theorist. We should have brought in a game theorist,
Hmm.
and we just never thought about it game theoretically. And you're like, "Yeah, you probably needed to bring one in."
Yeah.
Anyway, so you mentioned a little bit, Troy, that one of the goals of college Republicans is to bring in people, Republicans who are disaffected by the left of the party and by the right of the party. Are you able to dig into that a little bit more?
Not even just conservatives, but people overall.
Okay.
So, uh, there is a political technology in the sense of you're running for office, you have people, you're basically the political technology in the sense that your name is everywhere around town, signs are everywhere around town, you're running for office. This was a very unique experience for those who ran for office. Um, with the advent of, I'll keep going back to it, with the advent of social media, everybody could have the same experience of having this attention coming on about yourself. And so with that, I think there is a lot of now shared empathy with people, regular people, and people who are running for office and people who make unpopular decisions running for office. And so it's shattered this narrative of how the media really works for people. And so people have a better ability to dig through it. This is mainly young people too, who are online all the time. But you have a better ability to dig through and see what is this person being a politician and what is this person actually doing and what do they really mean by what they're saying? What's the subtext going on? Um, and that has caused people on the left and right to leave both their parties. They've seen a lot of the corruption when it comes to lobbying, alliances, and a lot of these agendas that aren't popular with Gen Z. They're mainly remnants of the older conservatism and the older liberalism. And people are saying, this isn't what I wanted on the left and on the right. And so I think you're seeing people, and I haven't looked at the most recent polling, but the majority of people who align themselves with the Democrat Party dropping, people who align themselves with the Republican Party dropping. Um, and this, and in particularly in Arizona, but I'm sure it's going to be the same across the country. That is going to destroy a lot of our elections because people are going to check out of politics, and that's going to further get rid of people's interests for how the country and the state and everything is being governed. So what we want to do is get them back and redefine them into the political message, into the political community in a way that these large parties can't. Large parties have to concern themselves with everybody in the state, the people who are in Scottsdale, the people who are in rural Arizona. On college campuses, you have the ability to be more reactionary and more on tune with the messaging and how people really feel. And so if you can build the infrastructure and media to voice that, you're going to see an impact in politics, and you're going to recreate that identity for people that they can actually cherish and go, well, maybe I'm not a Republican, but I'm a college Republican at ASU, and that actually means something.
Wow, I like that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Um, Jack, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that I agree with the sense that many young people are dissatisfied with the stodgy, sort of calcified attitudes that both the Democratic and Republican parties have had towards ideology. We've discussed on previous podcasts how many younger Democrats are dissatisfied with that sort of liberal economic ideology that the Democratic Party had for a very long time. And so offering an alternative to those young people, engaging them, saying, you don't have to agree with what the national party says, but there are people who are interested in you and your beliefs and want to make your life better. That's something that's absolutely valuable. And so having an alternative to the nationalized politics, having an alternative to those sort of stultified ideologies, that is a positive good in the marketplace of politics and in the marketplace of ideas for engaging or re-engaging young people in politics.
Troy, what would you say to that?
Um, I think it's I think it's even more simpler than that. I agree with that,
Mhm.
but I think it's even just people, and maybe there's a lot of ways you can go into it. So people are bad at communicating now, especially Gen Z, more than ever. You see this both in like the workplace, where now employers are saying, "Oh, it's hard to work with Gen Z because of how they communicate," as well as being online again. That's a huge theme in kind of everything I'm seeing around the world. That there aren't people. It's much harder to find people who can actually communicate and battle with words properly, and who can do that against current people in power who have the money, and the money challenge. The money is coming from the older generation who just have more so policy interests, although it depends. There's a wide range you can kind of get there. So when you're able to even just create a voice that people can go, "That's exactly what I've been thinking this whole time." It's that, and it's definitely 100% the case in politics. But I think it's the case kind of outside of that, and that's a lot of the political influencers we have now, where it's not even just, you know, I like this talking head because they say a lot of the same like policy agreements that I have. It's this guy's funny. It's that this has the same challenges that I have, and you can openly talk about that. And so that's what's drawing a lot of people. And we need more of that for the right reasons.
Right, because I mean, as I think we all here know, that can be employed as a grift.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of problems that we do have going on.
Mhm.
That's why we need those right reasons.
Right. I mean, let's be honest, it's not like this is the only type of politics that can be employed as a grift. Most types of politics can be employed as a grift. And politics and ideologies are big ideas. And anytime you have big ideas, you have these dangerous, or you have the ability of bad actors to prey on them.
Yeah. So that's my main criticism with both college campuses or college politics and kind of the current state of politics right now is everybody wants to be an influencer. That's the hot thing, is to go and build your little media community, which is important. We need people influencing the discussions that are going on. But now there's little work actually being done.
Mhm.
And that's what really needs the prioritization, more than anything else.
Yeah, can I tell you one thing that I like, just as a guy who's been on a lot of political campaigns, something that really worries me moving forward, just from a strictly campaign organizational perspective. This doesn't matter in the real world. This is purely if you're just trying to run a campaign. There are a million little tasks that need to be done that are really boring and really that don't make you feel necessarily great about yourself. You got to lick a lot of envelopes.
Mhm.
You gotta do a lot of data entry. You've got to show up to set streamers up for an event. And that used to be the purview of what I used to call the little old ladies brigade.
Mhm.
And they were always there. They worked from 9 till noon every day. and it was social for them. They'd have coffee and half the campaign team wouldn't show up till noon, right? Because they'd be working all into the night, right? The younger campaign group, but the older ladies were always there first thing in the morning. Obviously the leadership was there at 6 a.m., but you know what I mean? Like um, the little old ladies were there and they would do all this work that nobody else really wanted to do, that had to be done. And they did it purely because it was social.
Mhm.
And it was just because they'd done it for 30 years. So they kept doing it on every campaign. And I just wonder who's going to do that when they die.
It's an incredible, because that's how I was introduced to politics, was my grandma was and is one of those little old ladies, and so she'd bring me along, because that was free childcare, and so I'd come along when I was really young, and that introduction to politics, I think, really served me well because I wasn't introduced to it in an online way. I was introduced to it in an interpersonal way, and I'm tremendously grateful for that. I think it helped my intellectual and social development. And so the sort of demise of that is really troubling to me as well. The notion that young people won't have those same experiences that I had and won't be able to benefit from those same experiences is really honestly depressing. And so I absolutely agree with you, Rob. And I think that that's something that's not talked about enough is when you're exposed to politics online and not through the nuts and bolts of it and the social interactions of it, your political evolution and your intellectual and ideological attitude towards politics is wholly different. It's just wholly different.
We are seeing we're both seeing it, and I think kind of on like the depressing tone that you're talking about. Um, a new intellectual class structure coming through,
Hmm.
which in its most basic level are the people who can read and the people who can't read. The majority of people now are getting all of their information from audio format. Um, and people are reading less and less to the point that some people are genuinely becoming illiterate because they haven't had to like read books. When's the last time the majority of people have read a full book before?
I saw this statistic just to jump in.
Yeah.
Yesterday afternoon in my case, but that's
Okay.
beside the point. I'm probably
Well,
good on most people.
Well, actually, that's hitting on my point I'm going to get to.
yeah, I saw a statistic. This is from Pew Research in 2025. 50% of Americans read 0 books. It was only 50% of Americans who had read 1 or more book in 2025. So sorry, I just wanted to give that
No.
illustrate what you were saying.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's jaw dropping. Wow.
Mhm.
And likely that's kind of how things are going to keep going. Um, how people are raising children nowadays. It's not, here's an elementary school, here's a picture book for my child, here's a tablet. And you're going to watch, AI Instagram reels or something on the tablet, basically, YouTube Kids.
Yep.
So that's going to die. And I think you need to be able to read and write to have opinions that are logical and make sense. Um, I think that's the only way the intellectual process really works for anyone. So you're going to see this intellectual class divide come up between the people who are investing into reading and kind of cutting out technology and the people who aren't. Right. And what that's also going to do for society is shift now a lot more focus back on academic institutions. Now we have these institutions of people who read all the time, and they're
Mhm.
going to kind of go away from being this. Uh, I think there's this view that don't put it. It's gonna go away from being this view of like nerds locked up in a room, not talking to anybody, to kind of to publishing and pushing the narrative for everything happening in the world. But what that's going to do, it's also going to require courage, and that's the one thing that we don't have right now, for sakes of trying to uh, keep your financials straight and everything else. Is there's going to be such an overwhelming leverage of technology, and we'll see how cancel culture goes in the future. But it's going to require people to have courage and continue to create new forms of academic institutions. So, for example, like there's the University of Austin that's starting up. We're probably going to see way more institutions like this. We're seeing more classical liberal arts institutions pop up, both as high school prep schools and universities. And that's probably going to be the core of where we're going.
Right. And I think, I think ultimately, I hope that the existing infrastructure of universities, because it's a lot cheaper to reform a university than to start a new one, engage in this in some of this innovative work. Not saying that there shouldn't be room for more. I hope there's lots more. Believe me, I want that. My own job market, I want that. But I want there to be more demand for me, believe me.
Yeah.
But I also hope that it isn't just new institutions are, might be setting a new model up and putting pressure on old ones to adapt. This is the market in action, and hopefully that does happen. So Troy, you mentioned, all right, our listeners are listening and not reading a book currently. What both of you guys, let's start with Troy. Troy, what book should everybody read in 2026?
I would read. It was a long line of silence. That's a great question. That's a hard one. I would go with something along the lines of. Did you have an idea, Jack? Or am I passing
Yeah,
it to you for a
I
second?
want you.
I can pinch hit here. Um, the best book that I've ever read is The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt by Edmund Morris. In addition to being the single greatest biography that I've ever read and that for my money has ever been written, uh, it gives a fantastic explanation for Roosevelt's love of the outdoors and thus his eventual career protecting the outdoors, which was something I really respect. Environmentalism is sort of my passion, my passionate subject. And so reading about how much the outdoors meant for him from a health level and a mental health level, and then how he turned that impact into advocacy and how he served the environment that served him. That's something that Morris articulates very well. Also, it's just a great book. It's very well written. It's very entertainingly written, and I couldn't recommend it more.
I have a solid answer. I have two. One's a little cheeky. First one, definitely read the Bible. Both for the religious and moral values. Going back to Theodore Roosevelt, his dad told him, take care of your morals first, then your health, then focus on your academics. Um, but if you study scripture, you're going to start to see the way patterns work. Um, the scripture is a mix of, some would say it's all historical, but it's a mix of stories that happen all the time. And so you're going to develop your ability to see the way that patterns carry out in reality. Um, but the other one is probably, I would recommend Jonathan Siegel by, I can't remember who, but it's a short little book talking about the power of self belief and what is reality. And I think that book has the ability to, it did for me, open up people's minds to a higher level of thinking and awareness. So, real briefly, there's this theory on people's level of consciousness, and this is influencing a lot of our politics. Um, basic level of people, most people are about a level 5. That is, I'm like the main character of my story, and I'm going around living my own life. And then you also then get to level 6, where you realize I'm the main character of my life, and everybody else around me is also the main character of their lives. And so we're all just kind of main characters in this one world, living in our own little worlds. And you go up a level higher, level 7, where we all have our own perceptions of reality, but there's one single reality we're all in. And it keeps going up. It's really fascinating. But a book like Jonathan Siegel opens up your mind to that higher level of awareness. And I think that's going to be key both for people's progress as individuals, as well as understanding a lot of the trends happening in politics right now.
Those are good answers. I like that. So in 2027, I just want you to know my answer will be my book. This book that everybody will have to read, but it's not going to be in
Long as
one
you
of those little
sign it.
things. But it's going to be some, but it's not going to be out in 2026. So look forward to that in 2027. So I'll give a kind of a cheeky. I'm asking myself. You guys didn't ask me, but
No,
For those of you who haven't read a book in a
we'll
long
read in
time,
2026.
for those of you who haven't read a book in a long time, and maybe you've got kids, I'm reading the original Winnie the Pooh stories to my daughter right now. And the original A.A. Milne Winnie the Pooh stories are fantastic. And it's, pretty short, obviously. It's a collection of stories. And if you haven't read a book in a long time, sit down with your kids and read those old Winnie the Pooh stories because they're just fantastic. And there are, of course, far more intellectual books that you can read
And
as
then
well.
read them The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt,
And then, yeah, right.
which is a great child rearing exercise.
Well, it's the first night my daughter was born. This is 2021. I've got a great picture, and it's me reading Moby Dick to her.
Oh, yeah.
And of course I made sure that it was one of the whaling chapters, not one of the narrative chapters, but were the ones where he's like going really deep into like what catchings are,
Oh, good.
you know.
I'm sure she loved that.
So everybody should read Moby Dick too. It's a great book. But the and my daughter got her full fill of Moby Dick though in like her first 2 weeks being alive, and I mean she hasn't picked it up since.
Darn. Well, that's a real
I
shame.
mean she's
That's
4 now and she still hasn't read it cover to cover. It's unbelievable.
and you know what? She's likely to not go into the whaling industry.
She
Um,
she might never know what that's like.
yeah, and that's really sad. My heart goes out. My heart goes out.
All right, guys. Well, you know what? We're just about out of time here. But Troy, thanks so much for for coming on. It's been great hearing about your experience as a campus conservative, and just more broadly your perspective on things. It's been really wonderful. Is there any last thoughts you'd leave to somebody who's a conservative or who knows a conservative who's trying to make a decision about their future, knowing whether university is the right option or maybe something else, or maybe even what they can expect at university if they've decided to go to university.
For most people going to university, you probably still want to go to it. Unless, dead set you're a mechanical person, you're going to go be a technician doing something. You probably want to go. You want to surround yourself, find the best program, whatever it is that will connect you with people who know how to think. So we have programs here like the Center for American Institutions, SCETL, Civic Economic Thought and Leadership, and putting these programs, they're developing thinkers because those people are going to be the ones who are going to be going and leading a lot of these industries who are industrious. And that is how you're going to have an impact on the world. And I think that should be your mindset approaching university more than just job training. If you want to do job training, go network. I guarantee you'll find someone in 2-3 years, unless you want to go be a lawyer, doctor, etc. So find those people, make friends with them, um, and work hard.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I mean, my last pitch for university education here. I'll let Jack make a pitch last if he wants, but we're living in a constantly changing environment, and if you take university seriously, and you can get a university degree and not take it seriously, like we all understand that, right? But if you take it seriously, you'll meet people, you'll develop various soft skills that are necessary for dealing with a rapidly dynamic changing global economy. Because you do not know whether the skills that you're developing this year are 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 going to be relevant in 10 years. If they're hard skills. If they're soft
Yeah.
skills, you probably do.
And I'll add on to that real quick, kind of with this idea of the humanities and liberal arts being important, is you're going to get for people who are considering their financials, you're going to get your career financials from those hard skills that you learn on the job. Until then, university is networking to get to those people who will teach you that. And we're at a time now where being a generalist is going to come back, being a Renaissance man and knowing how to combine all these different things together to find your niche and apply that to your hard skills with wisdom. That's going to be your powerhouse.
Yeah. Go learn how to think. Go get an English degree or a history degree and learn how to think critically and read critically and speak critically. I absolutely agree with what Rob and Troy said.
The key is to take it seriously.
Yes.
if you take it seriously, you can get a B and not take it particularly seriously. We all know that, right? But if you take it seriously, it'll be of great value.
Mhm.
Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much. Troy, it's been great having you on. We'll have you on again. And when next time maybe Jack and I are doing some more naked punditry, and we need to hear about the Republican Party, get a really good Republican perspective. We'd love to have you on.
Yeah. Yes, I'd be in.
That'd be great. All right. Take care, gentlemen.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.